In this video, we're going to examine the probability of whether or not there will be a false flag alien invasion. And hopefully, in the remainder of this video, I'll stop talking like a complete weirdo. Here are 3 reasons I don't believe there will be any false flag alien invasion. Reason number 1. Every advanced craft that enters restricted airspace should be considered a threat unless you have 100% verification that it's not a threat. Dr. Stephen Greer and others have made it a big deal that the military has called objects that they can't identify that enters restricted airspace threats. And I think their extrapolation is simply just a faulty analysis. It is considered a threat, like I said, only because you don't know what it is. And I would be a little bit weirded out if they called it anything but a threat, which I'll go over more as we continue this video. And this is certainly not evidence that they're going to stage a false flag event, in my opinion. To be perfectly frank, I have sympathy with the military for considering these threats. I mean, let's face the facts. These objects have been showing up in highly sensitive, highly restricted airspace around nuclear aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, nuclear missile bases, nuclear power plants, Air Force bases, etc. And all around the world, in everybody's military, not just the United States. To me, that is grounds to call them a threat. They may not be an immediate threat, but to say that we know that they're benign is simply irresponsible, in my opinion. The reason it would be irresponsible for the military to label these objects as anything but threats is because if people heard high-standing officers say they were benign and they were 100% sure of it, it's my opinion that this would actually cause people to maybe not panic, but to feel quite uncomfortable. It may seem counterintuitive, but I would bet that if a bunch of psychologists got together at a round table and discussed what is the best approach to tell the American people that we are being visited by extraterrestrials so that the American people feel as comfortable as possible, the most strategic approach to that would not end up being saying they're 100% benign. And I'll explain exactly why that is. You see, when it comes to the unknown, people want to feel like it's being addressed. And let's say a high-standing officer in the United States government or the president, whoever you want, just visualize it, has a press conference, and this is what they say. Hello, everybody. We are being visited and have been visited by crafts of most likely extraterrestrial origin. They like to meddle with our military infrastructure. However, they don't seem overtly hostile, and they haven't been overtly hostile as far as we can tell, so we're just going to kind of let it be, not really pay attention to it. And we are 100% certain that they are benign. How are we 100% certain? Because that is our assessment. So we're going to kind of just back off and let these objects do what they do. We're not going to study them. We're not going to take a look at them, because everybody knows that extraterrestrials are always benign, always peaceful. I hope you sleep well at night, because we're sort of addressing it by sort of not addressing it. Have a nice evening. If any shade of that kind of presentation were to occur by a high-standing officer in talking about the presence of UFOs, the presence of extraterrestrials, I believe people would be scared because of that. And it's just a common psychological fact that if you present something in a way where you're not addressing it, people are going to be like, well, why are you not addressing it? So I feel like the term threat is really a way to communicate we are taking this seriously, and we are going to continue to examine it to ensure your security, your fellow man's security. So I think there is more complexity, there's more nuance in why the military calls it a threat than a lot of people want to acknowledge. Reason number 2 of why I do not believe there will be a false flag alien invasion is because if it was to occur, I believe skepticism of the whole thing would permeate our planet. A few nights ago, Richard Dolan was on the Coast to Coast AM program, and he was asked about the notion of a false flag alien invasion. And I think he made a valid point. Basically what he said is, right now, scientists across the world are literally hostile towards the proposition that we're being visited by extraterrestrials. So if there were to be a false flag alien invasion, that hostility would not somehow just evaporate. Now you could argue that the government would do everything they needed to do to present the kind of evidence that would fulfill the threshold of scientists, but I would argue that the scientists would still be fully capable of having skepticism no matter what evidence the government gave them. And if they were to do so, it would throw a big wrench in whoever was responsible for the false flag event. Because if the scientists are showing skepticism, then you can probably guess that humanity will not be far behind with such skepticism. But there is a much, much bigger obstacle to a false flag alien invasion above and beyond the skepticism of scientists. And many people don't contemplate this, but to me, this would actually be the most significant obstacle. If there truly was an alien invasion, those aliens would not be like, well, we like the communists, or we like the capitalists, or we like the socialists, or whatever. They're going to come into our planet and they're going to just destroy every last country. Whether they fully destroy it or partially destroy it, they're not going to be like, let's just go after the Iraqis, or let's just go after the Chinese. So every country, if it were to be a believable false flag event, would be negatively impacted by the alien invasion. The invasion by aliens would most definitely encompass the countries with the biggest militaries, such as China, Russia, United States, England, India, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, France, Turkey, Pakistan, and more. So all these countries that have been decimated by this alien invasion, these countries have very sophisticated intelligence agencies with satellites and spies and a whole apparatus. So it seems that it is very likely that they would figure out that something just isn't right about it. There's just something off about it. And ultimately, I actually believe that if it was a false alien invasion that was orchestrated by some shadowy government, when you consider that all these nations who would have tremendous incentive to get to the bottom of it, they would figure it out and they would discover who was behind it. And, you know, because of the manpower, think about it. Nations of the world coming together, trying to figure it out. You know, it's kind of funny, it's kind of ironic. A false flag alien invasion, supposedly there are some factions that believe it would unite the world under a one world government. But I would argue that it will have another effect that maybe people aren't anticipating. It would also unite the intelligence apparatuses of every last damn country. And, you know, not every member of every intelligence apparatus is compromised. Obviously, most of them would not be. You know, because if there is this Illuminati, or if there is this shadow government group, they can only encompass so many people, or otherwise it would be compromised just by sheer leakage of people saying, yeah, man, I'm part of the Illuminati. So what you would be dealing with is every intelligence agency of the world uniting. Like, it would be like, well, what could unite every intelligence agency of the world? A false flag alien invasion could. And if you think that these intelligence agencies wouldn't wonder if this could be some sort of artificial invasion from some shadowy group, you are crazy, because they would look at every angle. And they would look at satellite imagery. They would have spies. They would employ every single thing they could. And as a consequence, I really believe that this would preclude the possibility of getting away with a false flag alien invasion, which is a major reason it would never be attempted in the first place. Reason number 3. People would ask, why now? The truth embargo, or UFO cover-up if you prefer that term, has been ongoing since the 40s, and since then there have been no overtly hostile acts by the UFOs, or if there have been, it's been extremely isolated and extremely few. So if there was a false flag alien invasion, one of the first questions people would ask is, why now? If there is no definitive answer as to why the aliens have waited decades and decades to engage their operation on planet Earth, whether rational or irrational, the reality is still going to be that people are going to ask, why the hell now? Which will only contribute to skepticism that it was a truly authentic alien invasion. And since presumably a false flag alien invasion would comprise of energy beams and close contact of these UFOs, another thing people are going to ask is, number one, why would they use energy beams when they could have simply used some sort of biological warfare that would have just eradicated all of humanity in one go? The other thing they're going to ask, and certainly the scientists will ask this and people will follow what the scientists say, is why did they attack us? What was the motive for attacking planet Earth? It certainly can't be resources, right? There's plenty of planets out there that have minerals and have trees and forests and rivers that probably or definitely don't have sentience, so there's no reason to come here. And they can probably make all that in a laboratory considering they travel across interstellar space to get here. So since there's nothing on our planet that advanced civilizations need, people are just going to continually ask, why? Did they do it for giggles? And while it's possible they did it for giggles, that will not be a very satisfying explanation and will only lead to stoking further skepticism among scientists and among the world populace. The thing you have to understand about the proposition of a false flag alien invasion is that whoever it is who would be responsible for it would never want it to come back to them, because whatever power and influence they had prior to the false flag alien invasion, if people were to realize that it was in fact an artificial alien invasion, that power and influence would be eradicated. So you have to ask yourself, those that would be responsible for that operation, the false flag operation, would they be willing to take such a risk that they would lose everything? And my thesis is that the answer to that question is no. No, they wouldn't. Nor would they want to go to jail for war crimes, nor would they want all of humanity hunting them. Now you might say, yeah, but they have all the power. Well, no, they don't have all the power, assuming such a shadowy government exists that could pull that off. They don't have all the power because there are millions of people in the military that have rifles, they have tanks, they have jets. And so if the world began to realize who was behind such an operation, do you really believe that the militaries are going to be like, yeah, they screwed us all over, but I'm going to fight for them? No, that would not happen. The military would congeal. Every military of the world would congeal, and they would literally take out whoever was responsible for that operation. The final thing I want to say is, if you believe it's likely there will be a false flag alien invasion, I don't think you're stupid. I don't think you're unreasonable. In fact, there have been documented false flags in the past, so it's not as if false flags are not a real concept. I'm simply one person out of 7 billion persons, and that's just my opinion, that there will not be a false flag alien invasion because whoever would be capable of doing so would not be willing to lose all their power from the potentiality of making even just one mistake in which it could be verified that they are indeed responsible for that so-called alien invasion. Moreover, I'm pleased and happy that Dr. Stephen Greer made the documentary Unacknowledged, which I've watched 2 times and I think is superb. There's nothing wrong with being extra cautious to preclude the potentiality of something like that happening. And perhaps if there was even a tiny likelihood that it would happen, I would argue that Dr. Stephen Greer made that small likelihood even smaller. And in my book, that is a positive thing. Well, peeps, that's really all I have to say about that. If you enjoyed this video, I do hope that you will subscribe. Disclosure, capital D, 2018, baby.